midweek moment with you about petitioning God, about taking something before God and not walking away. So Nehemiah does this amazing example of this in Nehemiah chapter 1. He begins to speak to some friends and he discovers that Jerusalem is in absolute destruction, right? The people of Israel have exited exile, have left exile, have survived exile, and Jerusalem itself is in shambles, right? The walls are broken, the gates have been burned, all of this has taken place, and he is completely distraught in his spirit. His heart is broken, and he begins to just fall before the Lord. The Bible actually says in Nehemiah chapter 1 that he begins to weep and cry and pray, and he fasts and prays before the Lord for some days. We don't know how many some days are, but he stays there. He saturates the problem in the presence of God. He absolutely sits in God's presence until he has a few things. The first he does is he confesses the sins of Israel. The second thing he does is he confesses his own sins before the Lord. And the third thing he does is he asks God to remember the promises in his word over his people. Then he continues to stay in God's presence, saturating the burden of his heart in God's word, in his presence, seeking his wisdom until he has a God dream, a plan of action, and a way to motivate followers. Then he goes before the Lord and he says, "Give me favor." You see, at this time, Nehemiah serves the king. He serves the king as the cupbearer. He has one of the most horrible jobs I can possibly imagine, is to taste something before the king has it in order to determine whether or not it's poisoned. His life is completely expendable. And the king ends up asking him what's bothering him, and he begins to share his heart and says, if it would please the king, please allow me to go. He asks the king for an unlimited leave of absence. The king not only blesses him, gives him a letter of free transportation through the nations to get back to Jerusalem, where if you read the rest of the book of Nehemiah, you can see the hand of God over the rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem. What does this have to do with us today? Nehemiah shows us the unmatched value of saturating our burdens and our lives in the presence of God. You see, in our world today, with a world full of constant distractions, we kind of mention the burden to God and then saturate it in other places. We run to other people for what they want to say or what they could do or how they could pray or what they think, but we don't truly submerge everything in God's presence. We don't petition God like it once was taught. To petition God until something changes, until we have answers, or until we have the peace that surpasses all logic, the peace that surpasses all understanding. So I challenge you today that if something is bothering you, if there's something you're desperate to see changed in your life, if there's something that needs to happen, my challenge to you is to go before the Lord. See, in our house, there have been times, and many actually, I will tell you, where my husband has come home, and obviously I know my husband. I know his eyes. I know when something's on his mind. And I've asked him, I've said, hey, something's bothering you. What is it? And he's responded this way to me more than once in our marriage. He says, there is something bothering me, but I can't have any outside opinions. So I'll let you know after I get an answer from the Lord. And I'm not going to lie, I have been utterly offended by that statement. Not because I'm better than God, but because I want to be a part of my husband's thoughts. And after a few moments, I kind of get recalibrated. And I'm so appreciative of a man who's going to seek after God so much that he doesn't want anything else to adjust what he hears from the Lord. It challenges me on a daily basis, and I'm challenging you with that same heart. Whatever is on your mind, whatever is on your heart, I challenge you before you go to the outside sources to fully and completely submerge it, to completely saturate in God's presence until he gives you an answer or he gives you peace.